This is Epcot Center, where we can see the future today. Epcot Center represents a journey we all make every day, the journey to tomorrow. Part of this journey has always been the progress of science. At Epcot Center and other places, we'll see how the scientific process is an important part of all our lives. Of course, some people aren't too sure what science is all about. Now, here's an example. Donald, how come you're mixing those things?
To see what happens.
To see what happens. Well, curiosity is the beginning of science. What do you think might happen?
I don't know.
Well, don't you think you should know what you're mixing?
No.
Don't you think that...
I know what I'm doing.
Donald, maybe you better come along with us and find out more of what science is really about.
Okay.
This is where you can find out about science, Donald.
Science is just for scientists.
Science isn't just for scientists, Donald. It's part of our everyday life.
How?
That's how.
What?
That's right. Science starts with questions. Questions about people, about the earth, about space. Well, just think about the questions we've all wondered about. You see, Donald, people have always asked questions. Long ago, before people answered their questions with proven knowledge, they used to explain the unknown with stories and superstition. In ancient Egypt, for example, people were convinced that eclipses and comets were the signs of angry gods. But as we learned more through better observation and experimentation, we found new answers and new questions. Throughout history, many great minds have contributed to how we get answers in science. One of them was a well-known lawyer named Francis Bacon.
Huh?
Sir Francis Bacon.
Hello.
He lived from 1561 to 1626, and he was trained as a lawyer.
That's right. And I say we must apply to science the same laws of evidence, burden of proof, that we apply in a court of law.
How?
First, we ask questions. Then we gather all the facts we can. Then we come up with a reasonable explanation. And then we do experiments to see whether our theories are right.
Give me an example.
All right? I'll give you an example. My question was, how can we keep food fresh for longer periods of time?
Put it in a refrigerator.
Donald, this is the 17th century. We don't have refrigerators yet.
Oh, sorry.
Anyway, I observed and gathered facts. One fact is that when you put food out on a cold night, it stays fresher than when it's warm.
Brilliant.
Thank you. Now, my theory is that if you can find a way to keep food cold all the time, it'll stay fresh longer.
Are you going to do an experiment?
Exactly. I'm going to do an experiment with this. Donald, it's a goose, not a duck. As I was saying, I'm about to go outside and stuff this goose with snow and observe the effects.
Well, what happened?
From what you've observed in your life, what do you think happened?
He was right.
That's right, Donald. Bacon's theory was correct. And experiments like his eventually did lead to refrigeration. And you know, Donald, the scientific method that Bacon used is still in use today.
Yes.
Yes, and it always begins with questions. Sometimes we start by wondering how to do some of the things nature has already figured out. Even the earliest people on our planet must have wondered at the freedom of the birds who could navigate the skies while we were stuck down on the ground. Over 500 years ago, an artist named Leonardo da Vinci observed nature and used his imagination to figure out the scientific principles of flight. Science combined with art, and eventually people experimented with actual flying devices. Some of the first attempts were less than successful. Each new attempt brought new knowledge and offered us a better way than the one before. And today, thanks to the curiosity and imagination of thousands of scientists and engineers, we can do more than the birds that inspired us. We can fly to other worlds and get a bird's eye view no bird ever had. Wherever we go, we take with us the spirit of scientific inquiry. And it all began when we first looked up into the sky.
That's me proud to be a bird. Who turned out a light?
Science has enabled us to answer another age-old question, Donald.
What's that?
How to turn the night into day.
And that's like light.
That's right, Donald. Of course, through the ages, there were many attempts to create devices by which we could see in the darkness. But the scientist and inventor to whom we owe the most as far as the electric light is concerned is this man, Thomas Alva Edison. He, like many others, was working on an electric light bulb in the late 1800s. And, like the others, his biggest problem was finding the right kind of filament, the part that lights up when electricity passes through it. Edison's experience shows us how important accidents, trial and error, and persistence can be. For 13 months, Edison experimented with different filaments. None of them were good enough. Then one night he absent-mindedly toyed with some soot mixed with tar that his assistants had been using for another experiment. He realized that if he coated a thread with this material, it might make a workable filament. He tried it.
The filament lit up, but we wanted to see how long it would burn. We sat and looked, and the lamp continued to burn. None of us could go to bed, and there was no sleep for any of us for 40 hours. It lasted about 45 hours, and then I said, if it'll burn that number of hours, I know I can make it burn 100.
Edison experimented with other materials for his filament and found that bamboo worked even better. But for Edison, that still wasn't enough. He sent people all over the world to get samples of different kinds of bamboo. 6,000 samples were tried until he got the one he felt worked best. Other improvements followed, and with each improvement, the electric light bulb burned brighter and longer. Now we take it for granted that we can work, travel, play, even sleep safely when darkness falls. Let's look at another example of technology that stemmed from scientific discoveries. They control many of our appliances at home. They help solve crimes. They help run our airports. They keep track of our money. They also...
What about computer games?
Of course, computer games. This is an imaginary view of what it's like inside a computer game. Very futuristic. But did you know that the most basic computer was in use 1,000 years ago?
What?
Uh-huh. How do you count things, Donald?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Right, but when you get above 10, you're in trouble. A long time ago, the Chinese figured there had to be a faster and better way to count, so they invented the first home computer, the abacus. Many more attempts were made over the centuries to construct devices that would do our math more quickly. And although there was progress, the major breakthrough came when we entered the age of the electronic computer. This is ENIAC. Built in 1946, this early computer amazed everybody by being able to...
Don't switch to the machine.
Well, for instance, it could multiply the number 97,367 by itself
I can do that.
5,000 times in half a second. But it weighed 30 tons and used the power of 200 lighthouses, or enough power for 1,000 television sets. So scientists and engineers kept trying to make the computer smaller and faster. The biggest step in making computers small but incredibly fast was the development of the silicon chip. These chips contain complete electronic circuits that can make over 1 million calculations in 1 second. That's 200 times faster than ENIAC, using only a fraction of the space. And the questions continue. How can we make the chip even smaller, even faster? The questions lead to research that leads to tests of new models, that leads to better computers.
And that leads to more questions.
That's right. The scientific process just goes on and on, but it's still people doing the asking. Flight, the electric light bulb, and the computer. Just 3 examples, Donald, but the history of science and invention is full of questions and answers.
What is the nature of matter?
Can we harness the power of the sun?
How do people think? Can we prevent
What
earthquakes?
causes polio?
Can we travel across the ocean? Can we preserve the written
Can
word?
we cure cancer?
Can we transplant human organs? Can we cure disease
How
faster?
can we make the soil yield
Can we
more?
learn from other animals? How long have we been
What
here?
is the size of the universe?
Is there life in outer space?
Well, I have a question.
What's that?
Come I can't see you.
Well, our questions can't be answered all at once, Donald. The telescope. One of the reasons that scientists keep coming up with new information is that technology, like the telescope, lets us extend the range of our senses. For example, once we could only observe with our eyes, but now we have satellites that take cameras into outer space and send back pictures of our Earth. And we have microscopes that magnify tiny worlds. Our range of sound has also been extended. By using special microphones, we can now listen to outer space and hear whales talking underwater.
Oh boy, I'm gonna be a scientist. Wait a minute. Do you have to be old to make important discoveries?
No, Donald, you don't have to be old to make important discoveries. Take a look at the Scientists' Hall of Fame. A lot of scientists were young when they made important discoveries. Marie Curie was 36. Kepler was 24. So were Isaac Newton and Maxwell. Einstein was 26. Heisenberg and Rutherford were 27. And now we really are in the age of science. 90% of all the scientists and engineers who ever lived are still alive and working.
What are they working on?
Lots of things. The space program, for example. Thanks to the Columbia Space Shuttle, circling the Earth at 5 miles a second has become routine. However, operating at 0 gravity does take some getting used to.
What's that?
It's the Space Telescope, Operating in space, above the Earth's atmosphere, it will let scientists see 7 times as far as they can see with the most powerful telescope on Earth. One of the features of space will be this: a space community developed by scientists and others for the new pioneers, the people who are willing to live in space and also to work in space.
Work in space? Doing what?
Doing this, for example: mining asteroids for minerals that are very scarce on Earth, and perhaps discovering new ones. Scientists are keeping busy asking and answering questions about the Earth, too. Another frontier they're exploring is this one.
The oceans?
Yes, the oceans. Just as with space, scientists are seeing whether we can live and work underwater. The ocean has many resources that we're learning to use. By harvesting water-grown crops and mining minerals from the ocean floor, we're finding some resources to be more plentiful than on dry land. And speaking of dry land, water is what's needed to grow crops in harsh places like this. But rather than letting this land go to waste, scientists at Epcot are experimenting with ways to grow crops in places where water is scarce. These efforts are helping to ensure there'll be enough food to feed the people of the Earth. Of course, just as scientists are learning more about space and the Earth, they're also learning more about people and how to help them live longer and healthier lives. For example, by replacing a missing limb with a bionic one, or replacing a defective heart with an artificial one, or by using a laser to do eye surgery that no scalpel would be small enough to accomplish, or by using a new type of magnetic scanner that lets doctors and other scientists get an amazingly accurate picture of what's happening inside the human body. Now scientists also have ways of using computer graphics to create images of what we formerly could only imagine. The structure of atoms, for example. So you see, there's nothing in this world or out of this world that is beyond the reach of today's scientists.
That's terrific!
That's right. Donald, maybe you'll make an important scientific discovery someday.
Me?
Sure. The things we wonder about keep us looking for answers. Maybe one of your questions will lead to the next big scientific breakthrough.
Oh, boy. Maybe I can look in space. Or maybe I can look in the ocean. Or new ways of transportation.
For all of us on planet Earth, the age of discovery has just begun. Science is helping to shape a better world today, and the scientists yet to come will be among the leaders of our journey to tomorrow.